Like and subscribe now, or you're gonna have bad luck this week.
We all know that public schools are the most underfunded institutes in the United States. Teaching kids to read, write, and acquire new skills and tackle what life throws at them is an expensive task. So, schools resort to some unusual and sometimes dumb ways to save money. Today, we are looking at 10 dumbest things schools did to save money. Number 1 will show you just how inhumanely schools treat their kids, but we'll save that until the end. Let's begin, shall we? Number 10. Student teachers. Kids seem to be maturing faster every year, so what's the harm in teachers giving them a little increased responsibility? Like erasing the whiteboard, or closing notebooks, or maybe something a little bit easier like, I don't know, don't want to work them a bit too hard. How about letting them teach the class while the teacher takes a 6-month sabbatical? Yeah, that actually happened. According to a lawsuit filed in 2016, this exact scenario occurred when a horrendously understaffed school in Detroit assigned an 8th grader to teach math classes. Not just one for a goof either, but for an entire month. He must be really good at maths. After the regular math instructor left in frustration about class size and a lack of support, the school could not locate any qualified substitutes. This led to appointing the highest performing 13-year-old to take over both 7th and 8th grade math while the teacher's aide helped them with the classroom management. That's right, an adult teacher was seen less qualified than a 13-year-old student. Detroit schools are some of the most underfunded schools in the US, so these kinds of inhumane practices are often witnessed there. Number 9. School buses. You remember those yellow buses that took you from home to school and then back, right? For many kids, the most fun they had was in those buses, but the sad fact is schools have a hard time operating those buses, as they actually cost a lot. And the funding for the school transportation by the government is very less. Which is why more and more states are deciding to kill 2 birds with 1 stone and charge students for the trips. That teaches the kids that there's no such thing as a free ride. In Golden, Colorado, public schools started requiring their students to pay a fee to sit and lick the windows of their school buses, charging a modest $150 a year to break even. But if you live in the San Diego district, the same thing costs $575. But that isn't even the worst one. Philadelphia schools proposed a price tag of $2.25 per ride, each way back in 2016. Over the course of an entire year, that adds up to over $800. Why is Philadelphia always in the front seat when it comes to screwing up the kids? Number 8. Serving awful lunches. Let's be clear here. School lunches are never as good as the food you get at home. And if they are for you, then man, do I envy you. The school food is more like a formality, and you'll be lucky to get something that's both healthy and tasty. But some schools went further and tried to screw kids in the worst way possible by serving food that is way past its best before date, especially meat. Saving food for future use is not a bad thing, do not get us wrong. But the problem arises when the time between storage and use is just too long. And when we say long, we're not talking about a week or a month. Think 5 or more years. Yes, schools have been found to preserve their meat for that long. This happened mainly in the Hawkins County school system in Tennessee, where students were served pork that had expired more than 5 years prior. Where do they even store meat for 5 years? To make it a bit tasty, the cafeteria manager directed the lunchroom staff to cover it with gravy. And when they were caught, the school management didn't even acknowledge the mistake. They pointed out that the expiration dates were merely recommendations rather than restrictions. Shh, hey, do you hear that? Parents were also assured that the expired meat was harmless, and some schools made it mandatory for each child to have this kind of food. So if a student turned up with their own fresh and somehow healthier food, it will be confiscated in exchange for the meat from the last decade. Number 7. Cheating in test scores. If you're from the United States, you know that the schools with the better test scores get funded more, for obvious reasons. The assumption here is that schools that do well are putting in work to get those shiny results, which might be true to an extent. And for those that seem to post below par grades, same less than enough funds for them. This worked well for a few years, but some oversmart school management went overboard with this one too. Schools decided to exploit this to their advantage by messing with the test scores. For better test scores, schools started cheating on their students in the crudest ways. In Atlanta and Baltimore, schools were caught manually erasing students' wrong answers and replacing them with the correct ones. Imagine if they did this for colleges too. No one would have a bad GPA. Number 6. Nightclub. Remember the awkward and uncomfortable experiences offered by school dances? Nah, come on, don't be embarrassed, we know you do. But what if schools actually made dancing fun? Well, if you happened to attend a certain school in Philadelphia about a decade ago, all you had to do was hang around after the bell rang for the education of a lifetime when the facility transformed itself into a full-fledged nightclub. By day, you may know it as the Harrenby Institute of Science and Technology, a charter school in Philadelphia, excelled in building students' self-worth, from kindergartners all the way up to 8th graders. But when the sun sets, the institute changed into an actual nightclub, which rotated the fridges into liquor cabinets, lowered a disco ball from the ceiling, and turned its cafeteria into Club Damani. What a way to make a few extra bucks, right? Harrenby is a legend that just keeps on giving. Number 5. Renting out school property. Starting a nightclub after school is one thing, but this renting it out thing is going much further. But you would be very surprised to know that schools have a lot of in-demand assets that can be rented out to fetch a healthy dollar amount. Think of fax machines, copiers, and parking spaces. And since schools don't run all year round, they are using these assets to get additional dollars for their budgets. One school in Grapevine, Colleyville, Texas, for instance, made a nice additional income renting out its property. They used their office equipment to print documents for a local city government and ended up with an additional $30,000. But they didn't stop at that. Looking around, they discovered they had a lot of unused parking spaces around the football stadium. They sold this off to nearby office workers, netting another $87,000 in side earnings. With both of these incomes, the school was able to afford the salary of 2 teachers. We guess that wasn't so dumb after all. Sometimes when renting out isn't an option, selling is just as effective. One school even sold a cow for $1,700 to fund the baseball team. That doesn't seem like a bad one, does it? Seriously though, the government needs to fund schools better. Number 4. Extortion. Many would agree that schools now behave like the mafia in order to survive. They charge, or should we say demand, the kids and their parents to cough up hundreds of dollars in order to keep the schools running. The Marana Unified School District in Arizona sent a note to the children's parents demanding $250 per parent in tax credit. So that is $500 for a couple. They wanted the money because they had to raise $12,500. And if the parents didn't pay within a week, they were going to start physically punishing their children, forcing them to do 10 grinders, plus 1 for every day the parents didn't give away the money. Or until they die, we guess. Number 3. Ads. If you've seen advertisements on your school buildings, don't worry, you aren't the only one. Times are tough in the United States. School boards, unions, and governments have been fighting for decades to ensure their budgets are balanced and to prevent more cuts. In the last few years, some schools think they have found a way to shield their schools from drastic cuts through advertising. Many believe opening the school up to ads will help save their school in the long run. It's an alternative to endless school fundraisers and a deal with the commercial devil that some are willing to deal with. The use of advertisements in football stadiums and college arenas are not new, but now you see Walmart and Little Caesars pizza ads on schools and buses. One school even put ads on a student's locker. Crazy, right? These ads work brilliantly because kids are dumb and they buy anything to look cool. So advertising money is just easy cash. But many people think that ads are not for schools. What do you think? Let us know your opinions in the comments down below. Number 2. Renting out kids. If you thought the property was the only thing schools rent out to raise money, then you'd better think again. Schools have now gone as far as renting out their other more useless assets. Yes, we're talking about the school kids. This is when you know the cash crunches hit quite hard. In this case, the school children, especially athletes, are treated as one of the school's assets and are sent out on income-generating errands for the school. And the errands here vary, but we're not talking about bake sales or barely legal car washes either. One school in Oregon has started rent-a-wrestler programs, which serve up wiry prepubescents to attend to your gardening needs. Another has posted a "will work for helmets" ad on his Facebook page. And the students didn't even get the money. It was directly wired to the school administration. At least pay up the kids, man. Number 1. No lunch. Starting nightclubs and extorting kids' parents like mafia seems wrong on so many levels. But nothing on this list is comparable to what we have on number 1. Schools have become so heartless that they don't have any sympathy left for the little innocent kids. One school district in Kokomo, Indiana didn't take kindly to students who owed more than $25 in lunch fees. To deal with these poor kids, the school stopped serving them food and just gave the kids cheese slices and bread. Inglewood School in New Jersey, however, went further and completely stopped serving the kids lunch and also contacted Child Protective Services, requesting that the parents who owed $100,000 in lunch fees be investigated for neglect. Gotta make that cash anyway, right? Anyway, what's the worst thing your school did to save money? Let us know in the comment section down below, and if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel.